The aircraft cruised smoothly at 30,000 feet, cutting through a sky the color of pale steel. Inside the cabin, the familiar hum of engines wrapped the passengers in a false sense of safety. Seatbelt signs were off. Coffee cups rattled gently on tray tables. It was an ordinary flight until it wasn't. In seat 12C, a woman sat upright, unlike most passengers around her. She didn't sleep. She didn't watch the screen in front of her. Her eyes moved subtly, tracking sounds, vibrations, and rhythms most people never noticed. She wore simple clothes, no jewelry, her hair pulled back in a practical knot. To everyone else, she looked like just another quiet traveler. But her ears caught something wrong. A faint change in engine tone, a hesitation, a sound that didn't belong. At the same moment, inside the cockpit, the captain's hands slipped from the controls. His head dropped forward. The aircraft stayed level only because the autopilot was still engaged. The first officer turned, called his name once, then louder. No response. He reached over, shook him hard. Nothing. "Captain?" His voice cracked. Training kicked in, but fear followed close behind. The captain was completely unconscious. The first officer grabbed the intercom. "Cabin crew, cockpit, we have a medical emergency." In the cabin, the chime rang, a sharp, unnatural ding that cut through the murmur of conversation. Flight attendants froze for half a second before moving. One rushed toward the cockpit. Another grabbed the medical kit. Passengers noticed the tension instantly. A child stopped laughing. A man lowered his headphones. A woman tightened her grip on the armrest. The plane dipped slightly as the autopilot corrected itself. "Why did we drop?" someone whispered. The woman in 12C felt it immediately. Her jaw tightened. She closed her eyes for a brief second, listening, counting the seconds between adjustments. Something was off. Very off. Moments later, a flight attendant emerged from the cockpit, her face drained of color. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, trying to keep her voice steady, "we have a small medical situation with one of our pilots. Please remain seated." The words were calm, her eyes were not. The plane drifted left, then corrected, then drifted again. A man across the aisle said, "That doesn't feel normal." Sweat beaded on the first officer's forehead as he fought to stabilize the aircraft while trying to assess the captain's condition. He was trained for emergencies, but not this. Not alone. Not at cruising altitude with 200 lives behind him. He made the call he never expected to make. "Cabin crew," he said quietly over the intercom, "ask if there is anyone on board with flight experience. Military, commercial, anything." The words traveled fast. A flight attendant moved down the aisle, her steps quick, her voice. "Is there anyone on board with piloting experience? Any pilots, military or civilian?" Urgent but controlled. Passengers exchanged looks. Some shrugged, some avoided eye contact. Fear settled like a weight in the cabin. Another slight drop. Gasps. The woman in 12C unbuckled her seatbelt. She stood slowly, deliberately, as if standing up in the middle of the sky was the most natural thing in the world. Nearby passengers stared at her in surprise. "Yes," she said. The flight attendant turned, relief and desperation colliding in her eyes. "You're a pilot?" The woman nodded once. "Former F-16 pilot, Air Force." The aisle went silent. A man laughed nervously. "She's joking, right?" The woman didn't look at him. Her gaze was fixed on the flight attendant. "Take me to the cockpit," she said calmly. "Now." The attendant hesitated for less than a second. Then she grabbed the intercom. "We have someone," she said. "She says she can help." The cockpit door unlocked. As the woman stepped forward, the plane jolted again, this time sharper. A baby began to cry. Someone whispered a prayer. Inside the cockpit, the first officer looked up in disbelief as the woman entered. "She's an Ex-F-16 pilot," the flight attendant said quickly. The first officer didn't argue. He didn't ask questions. He just nodded. "Captain's out," he said, completely unresponsive. The woman took in the cockpit in one sweep of her eyes. Commercial jet, different layout, different systems, but the language of flight was the same. She moved to the captain's seat. "I'm not taking command," she said evenly. "You are. I'll assist." Her hands hovered over the controls. Not touching yet, respecting the aircraft, respecting procedure. She listened. Engines, airflow, altitude warnings murmuring softly like distant voices. Autopilot's compensating too much, she said. She's fighting turbulence we don't need to fight. The first officer stared at her. You can tell that just by sound? She glanced at him. You learn to hear when a jet is uncomfortable. Another bump. The cabin lights flickered. In seat 12C, now empty, a small notebook lay open. On its first page, written in neat block letters, were 2 words. Stay calm. Back in the cabin, passengers waited, trapped between hope and terror, unaware that their lives now depended on a woman who had once flown faster than sound, and had never forgotten how to land when everything went wrong. The cockpit felt smaller than it looked from the outside. Every switch, every dial seemed to watch her as if testing whether she belonged there. The woman, former F-16 pilot, slid into the left seat just enough to see clearly, not enough to take control away. Outside, the sky darkened. Thick clouds rolled beneath the wings like an angry sea. Captain's pulse is weak, the flight attendant said quietly from behind. Medics. The woman nodded once. Then she leaned forward, eyes scanning the instrument panel. On the grounder standing by. Okay, she said calmly. First, breathe, we've got time. The first officer exhaled shakily. Autopilot's holding, but she's unstable in this air. Then we help her, the woman replied, not fight her. She pointed, ease the climb rate, let the aircraft settle. The first officer followed her instructions. The nose steadied, the engine tone smoothed, just slightly. In the cabin, passengers felt the change. The sharp jolt softened. Fear didn't disappear, but it loosened its grip. Air traffic control crackled through the radio. Flight 782, we see irregular altitude. Confirm status. The first officer hesitated. The woman leaned closer to the mic. This is passenger assistance, she said. I'm a former military pilot. The captain is incapacitated. We need priority landing. There was a pause long enough to feel terrifying. Then ATC replied, voice firm and focused. Understood. We have you. Nearest runway is clear. Weather is challenging but manageable. The woman closed her eyes for half a second. Story of my life, she murmured. They began the descent. Clouds swallowed the aircraft whole. Visibility dropped to nothing. The plane shuddered as crosswinds slammed into its side. Warning lights blinked, not emergencies, but reminders that this machine demanded respect. Commercial jets don't like aggressive hands, she said quietly. Treat her gently. The first officer nodded, clinging to her voice like a lifeline. In the cabin, oxygen masks did not deploy, but panic did. A man clutched his wife's hand. A teenager typed a goodbye message he never sent. A grandmother whispered prayers under her breath. Z-12C remained empty, but her presence filled the plane. Back in the cockpit, the runway frequency came alive. You're lined up, ATC said. Winds from the west. Expect turbulence on final. The woman leaned forward, studying the instruments. I flew into worse, she said softly, not boasting, just remembering. Desert storms, missile lock warnings, runways barely visible through smoke. This isn't combat, she told herself. This is care. At 5,000 feet, the turbulence intensified. The plane dropped suddenly. Screams erupted from the cabin. The first officer's hand shook on the yoke. I've got it, I've got it. Easy, the woman said firmly. Let her fall a little. She wants to, then guide her back. He did. The aircraft steadied. Good, she said, and that's flying. At 3,000 feet, the runway lights appeared through the clouds, blurred, distant, but real. The woman felt a familiar calm wash over her. This moment, the final approach, was where noise faded and instinct ruled. Landing gear, she said. The first officer deployed it. A loud thunk echoed through the fuselage. Passengers held there. At 1,000 feet, alarms chirped softly. Breath. Too fast, the first officer said. I know, she replied. We need speed to cut this wind. We'll bleed it later. The runway rushed toward them. The plane swayed left, then right. Correction, she said. The first officer adjusted. Again, adjusted. At 200 feet, the turbulence hit hard one last time, slamming the aircraft downward. Now, she said sharply, flare. The first officer pulled back. The tires hit the runway. Hard, loud, real. Scream! The plane bounced once. Passengers screamed. Hold it, she commanded. The second touchdown was solid. Reverse thrust roared. The aircraft slowed, faster, then slower until finally it stopped. For one heartbeat there was silence. Then the cabin exploded. Cheers, sobs, applause. Strangers hugging strangers, people dropping to their knees in the aisle. In the cockpit, the first officer leaned back, shaking, tears streaming down his face. "We're down," he whispered. "We're actually down." The woman closed her eyes and released a breath she'd been holding since 30,000 feet. "Yes," she said quietly, "you landed her." Emergency crews surrounded the aircraft. Medics rushed in and took control of the captain, who was still unconscious but alive. Officials flooded the cockpit. "Ma'am," one said, awe in his voice, "what's your name?" She shook her head slightly. "Doesn't matter." "But you saved." She smiled, gentle but firm. "I didn't save them," she said. "I flew with them." As passengers disembarked, many searched for her. Some cried when they found her, others hugged her without words. A little girl handed her a folded piece of paper. Inside, written in shaky letters, were 4 words. "Thank you for landing us." The woman folded the paper and slipped it into her pocket. Later, alone in the terminal, she sat quietly, just another passenger again. But high above, in a sky she once ruled, the echo of her call sign still lived.